In this video, we're going to look at more examples of different types of composable functions and what happens during initial composition. So this is what we looked at previously. We looked at what this did, and there were three goals that we wanted to accomplish, which is creating all the groups in the slot table, setting up recomposition scopes, and hooking into listening to the snapshot system. And in the end, that example produced this configuration in the slot table. So now let's look at other things that come into play when creating groups. So suppose I don't want to create a group. I don't want to create a restart group for a composable function. You would want to do this very rarely. You would want to do this if you have some piece of logic that's not relying on recompositions that will be constant. And so what happens when you provide the annotation non-restartable composable? So underneath the hood in the compiler plugin, what it does is that it won't basically transform the parameters and give a composer to it. It won't do that. So what that ultimately will do is that there won't be in conclusion, any groups created in the slot table if it had that annotation. So that's something to know. So another example that we could look at is what happens when you have an example method like this, composable, but this time you're using a remember method to be able to wrap around some state, and your state is a reference type, a data class, and you can just guess what this is going to do, because underneath the hood, what it's going to do is that it's going to store an instance of that state in the reference slot like this in the group number 2. And if that remember method relied on some computation of a value, like a key like this, where does that key get stored? So in this case, the key is a primitive type, is a primitive value, integer value. And what it gets stored, that gets stored in the primitive slot, just like this, that computed value. And this is important because it gets updated when a recomposition happens, this primitive slot. And what happens if you have a remember method with multiple values, not just one, so you have two values. So both of these values, on all of them that you provide, all the keys are stored in the group's primitive slot, just like this. So these are the different examples and their implications on what happens in the slot table when you use the non-restartable annotation or when you have remember. So in the next video, we'll look at recompositions.